My name is Dr. Saliha Afridi. I'm going to be with you guys for the next hour speaking about sleep. And I guess let's start off with, what if I told you that I could give you this powerful elixir of life, this magic potion that basically improves your immunity by 70%. It de-risks every major disease out there. It reduces your blood pressure. It actually reduces cognitive decline, like things like Alzheimer's and dementias. It actually improves your reproductive systems, as well as just your desire to want to reproduce. It actually helps you manage your weight. It helps you be more creative. This elixir helps you problem solve. This elixir improves your mental health and your ability to sort of regulate yourself. This elixir, if we have just forgotten about all these other things, but this elixir actually makes you look better. Okay, so if I gave you this little potion and all you had to do was drink that, would you drink it? If I told you that it improves your life expectancy and it improves just your day-to-day engagement and joy, you would say, yep, I'll take it. Give me whatever, and I'll pay whatever, right? You would do that. Well, that actually is sleep. Sleep is the single most effective thing that you can do for your brain and your body. So before I go into that, I just want to say a few things. That was my grand opening. But before I get into all of that, I would like to say a couple things about housekeeping. One, this session is being recorded and it will be sent to you as a link, or it will be downloaded on your intranet, whichever the system is for you. And number two, there is a Q&A box at the bottom for you guys, and I will be checking those questions right at the end. So I will not be stopping and looking at those during the talk, but I promise to get to them at the end. And it's usually that I've answered all the questions, or everyone has the same question. So it doesn't actually take very long for us to get through that. Actually, no, I think that's it, number two. So now I'm going to share some slides with you. Oh, wait, there is a number two. The number three is that if I get dropped, I will come back. Now, earlier today, for the first time in like 5 months, all of a sudden, my husband lost his internet connection. And so it is very possible that I could get dropped at some point. So don't go anywhere. I will come right back. You can stay in the room, even if I'm not in the room, or if I leave and then you get disconnected, then everybody just come back, okay? So we will try to do this hopefully, and it will not go bad. Anyway, so like I said, my name is Dr. Saliha Afridi. I am a clinical psychologist, managing director of the Lighthouse Arabia, which is a mental health and wellness center in Sukim, Dubai. We are one of the largest clinics in the region, and we have over 30 mental health professionals, including psychology, psychiatry, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go too much into this. Everybody just follow us on our social media and you will know everything that we do. I would also recommend that you go on our website and go under events, and under events, you will find a calendar of events, and there's like 18 different support groups that we are running by seasoned senior clinicians that are free of charge for the community. So if there is an issue where you are not able to afford therapy or you don't have insurance, then I would really highly recommend that you do some of these online support groups. We have one for motherhood. We have one for stress and anxiety during COVID. We have, I mean, really, if there's like a support group needed, we probably have it on some level. So I would really encourage you to do that. For those of you who have to drop off right after, like we end at the hour, then I would recommend, if I didn't answer your question, to please go on my personal professional account, which is at Dr. Saliha Afridi on Instagram, or at Lighthouse Arabia on Instagram, and just send me a message and I promise you that I will respond. I'm actually very good about that. Take it as a full-time job. All right, so here we go. This is our team. Like I said, we are all licensed by the DHA or the CDA. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we are going to be talking about sleep. Now, most of us think of sleep as a resting state, and I kind of want to put this idea to rest, because this idea that go and rest and your body is just needing to shut down is actually really outdated, and it's not necessarily supported by science anymore. Our body is extremely active when we sleep. And so I want to talk a little bit about what the different things that the body does when you don't get sleep, what effects happen to the body. So I'm going to do some deep diving into cognitive decline, the learning and memory, which is different from cognitive decline, the mental health impact of losing sleep or not getting enough sleep, and then what it does to our immunity. Then I want to deconstruct sleep a little bit, because it's like, well, what goes on? I close my eyes, I open my eyes, and that's it. But not really. We're going through little phases and stages of sleep. What are the important ones? What you need to do to make sure that you're going through all the different stages. And then how do you get a good night's sleep? So I have really, I could be a sleep consultant at this point. I've really worked on this for the last, I would say, 4 years and honed it down. Now, I want to say to everybody that I am from the camp, recovering person, where I used to say that I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm one of those people. I can operate on 3 to 4 hours of sleep, this bravado, which is like, oh, I don't need that much sleep. I just have so much to do, and I have so much to learn, and I have so much to give, and let me just stay awake. And I get that. And I also have 4 children, so that kept me quite up for quite some time. But think about that a little bit. Think about that, first of all, Mother Nature and evolution didn't keep anything in our system that wasn't absolutely essential for us. Okay, got rid of things as we evolved, and our brain evolved, and our body evolved. We actually changed. So our brain doesn't look like it did 100,000 years ago. It looks a little bit different. And so we evolved and we changed. But the one thing that Mother Nature has kept is that we actually will sleep 1/3 of our life. Why is that? Sleep is when we are not mating, we are not eating, we are not hunting for food, we are not, we are exposed to predators when we are sleeping. Why would something that is actually just seems like it is nothing, and we are so exposed to danger when we sleep, why would Mother Nature keep that around? Think about that. If it wasn't absolutely essential for our being, why would it still be here? And so most of us have sort of written this off as, I don't need it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we can do. And it is absolutely critical for our well-being. And the pillars of a good, healthy system, mind and body, are sleep, exercise, and diet. We have focused so much on exercise and diet, and now we're learning that absolutely the foundation of all of this is actually sleep. And if your sleep is off, your diet will be off because your insulin is not regulated. If your sleep is off, your exercise will be off because you will just be a lot more fatigued and you will not have the energy. So literally at the base of all of this is going to be sleep. So I want to deep dive into a lot of these things. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, what is she talking about? Don't worry, you will not have that question when I'm done. So let's talk a little bit about the state of sleep. Matthew Walker, and I will be quoting him a lot because he's actually, I mean, there's a lot of different sleep researchers, but he happens to be my favorite just because he just talks like simple, plain like a simple person, you know, he doesn't get too complicated. And he has actually said that we are in a catastrophic sleep loss epidemic. And I would say pandemic at this point. And this is not because of COVID, and this is not because, oh, you know, something else is happening. This is actually going on for the last 5-10 years now. And anything less than 7 hours is considered insufficient, and by some sleep researchers as sleep deprivation. Okay, 7 to 8 hours. If you are between the ages of about 25 to 60, you should be getting about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. As you get a little bit older than 60, then you need less sleep. That's just, I don't know, the body just does what it does. You end up getting 6 hours of sleep. And if you are younger than that, if you are a teenager, you need 12 hours of sleep. If you are a toddler, you need 14 hours of sleep. So the further out you go towards the edges, you're going to need different amounts of sleep. So I'm just talking to the people that are within the 20s to 60s range, and that is usually 7 to 8 hours of sleep. The World Health Organization has actually labeled night shift work as a natural carcinogen. Now, night shift work is people who are not necessarily night owls, but they are working all night long and then sleeping all day long. And so when you shift the cycles up like that, and some days you're working in the day, some days you're working in the night, that actually is really messing with your system. And a carcinogen is anything that causes cancer. Okay, so for people who don't know what a carcinogen is, it is anything that causes cancer. So if you are not getting your regular rhythmic sleep, then you are exposing yourself to something that could be cancerous in just your nature. And I'll tell you a bit more about why. The Center for Disease Control in the United States has declared insufficient sleep a public health concern. And even though we know all of this, the stigma associated with resting and sleeping is still very much. So if, you know, the boss messages and, you know, an email at 9 p.m. and you're supposed to be responding by 9:02, and if you don't do that and you respond by 7 a.m., it's almost like, well, what's this person doing? And why is he sleeping so much? Like, why is he resting so much? And it's just really such archaic and old school thinking. If we evolve with the science, and if we evolve with what we know through neuroimaging and, you know, sleep research labs, we would know that absolutely we should not be working. When the sun goes down, we go down. Like, that's kind of how we need to be operating. For the majority of the world, there are 25% of the world's population who are night owls, and then they need to work accordingly. But the world caters to those who are not night owls. And so I would just like to say that most of us are operating from a place of sleep debt at this point, because majority of us are not getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That's just the way the world is working, and that's why we are in this catastrophic sleep loss epidemic. So, having said that, the sleep is the single most effective thing that you can do for your brain and your body. And what happens during sleep? It is absolutely critical. So this idea that, oh, I'm resting and everything is shutting down, no. Nothing is shutting down. The only thing that is shutting down when you go to sleep is your conscious mind. Your conscious mind rests, this is your cortex, and everything else comes online. Your subconscious, unconscious mind comes online. Your body says, all right, the person is down, let's get moving. And then the body starts to regulate itself. It starts to do tissue repair. It starts to do homeostatic restoration. This is anything like temperature control, insulin control. All of this is happening. And this is why athletes are super obsessed with their sleep, because if they sleep better, they recover faster and they have less injuries. You know, there are athletes who will not sleep less than 12 hours because they know that only when they are sleeping does the body do what it does. Okay. And now there's all sorts of things happening in the brain. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about cognitive decline. Your memory is doing what it needs to do. Your emotions are being regulated at this time. Memories are being consolidated at this time. A lot of people have said to me, I can't remember things anymore. I feel like so disconnected from reality, like I just feel like it's one big long day, and I have no memories of what happened in January. Well, this year is a little bit strange, but you know, it does feel like one big long year. But like generally speaking, most of us feel a little bit disconnected to our worlds. And that's because our memories are not consolidating, and we're not paying as close attention, because you need good rest before you're able to pay good attention. It's absolutely critical for your learning, and I'll tell you more about that, and for your creativity. Now, when you don't get enough sleep, literally you are putting yourself at risk for every major disease out there. And the two most feared diseases in the developed world are cancer and Alzheimer's and dementia. Okay, and you are basically increasing your risks of getting these by 200 to 400% if you do not get sufficient sleep. You are increasing your risk for obesity, heart disease, diabetes, blood pressure, Alzheimer's, mental health problems, strokes, cancers, hyperglycemia, poor mental health, like I already said, and higher mortality. Obviously, you just don't live as long. So the whole idea of I'll sleep when I'm dead you'll be dead a whole lot earlier, or you just will not be living, because you will be either dealing with some sort of sickness, or you will actually not be connected to anything around you because you are sleep deprived. So I just want to say that you are increasing your chances to lots of different things. And if you are, let's just say, if you're 45%, if you're 45 years or older and you are getting less than 6 hours of sleep, then you are increasing your chances of getting heart attacks by 200% and strokes by 200%. So 2 times more likely than the person who is getting more sleep. So you're just absolutely opening yourself up to risk. And all you have to do is just go to sleep, right? What are we doing to ourselves? Like, we're the only animal or the species on the planet that keeps itself awake longer when it actually is tired. So what are we doing? And let's do a little bit of a deep dive into sleep and cognitive decline. Now, let me tell you something about the lymphatic system. So we're all aware of the lymphatic system. Well, maybe you're not aware. So let me just tell you really quickly. The lymphatic system is where it is basically the garbage disposal system of the physical body. Okay, so you have lymphatic massages, you have lymphatic brushes, you have all sorts of things to drain your lymphatic system. You know, these facial rollers that you have, they actually drain the lymph, they drain the toxins out of your body, apparently, and then, you know, your lymph nodes and all of that stuff actually drains the body of its toxins. And we take toxins in from air conditioners and our food and our environment and the roads and the traffic, and all of that stuff is actually putting toxins into our body. Now, these toxins have to get out of our body or we are going to get very sick. So the body is super intelligent and it knows what it needs to do. So it releases all of these toxins, and we can do all sorts of things to eliminate the toxins from our body. Now, in the last couple decades, we have found that there is another set of pipes called the glymphatic system. And the glim comes from the word glial cells, and the glial cells, which are around the brain cells. So imagine that you have a brain. This is the brain, and there are glial cells that go around the brain like this, okay? And the glymphatic system basically is the brain drain of the power cleanse that goes on when you go into deep sleep. So I can do all kinds of things to activate my lymphatic system all day long. But guess what? The only thing that can turn on the glymphatic system is deep sleep. Really. And so what happens is the brain, the glial cells basically shrink, and there's a fluid that comes in and washes the brain. And it washes the brain from all this oxidative stress that we put on it all day long, okay? And so this only happens in deep sleep. And there's two sort of proteins that are like a plaque. You know, when you brush your teeth and you get rid of the plaque, and if you don't brush your teeth, well, I don't know if anybody knows that, but if you don't brush your teeth for a couple of days, there's a plaque that starts to build up. Well, that plaque basically is called beta amyloid and tau proteins, and they build up around the brain, and they build up around, and they literally start to suffocate the brain. One night, guys, of not getting deep sleep or insufficient sleep can increase the plaque in your brain, and you're increasing and you're increasing and you're increasing. And then there happens neural death. And that basically is the beginning of Alzheimer's or dementia. Okay, so, and they've done research where they had people sleep for 8 hours, but every time they sort of were going into the state of deep sleep, they actually woke them up. So the lights came on, or they woke them up, and one night, they just did it for one night because it wouldn't be allowed any other way. One night they did it, and they did a spinal tap afterwards, and they found that the proteins that I told you about, the beta amyloid and the tau protein, were actually increased just by one night of not getting the deep sleep. So like I said, you can tell me, oh, Sal, I can sleep right now. Tell me now and I can pass out. That's not the sleep I'm talking about. That's just you being exhausted. I'm talking about a deep restorative sleep. And in that deep restorative sleep, the power cleanse happens in your brain. And that's when you're really switched on. Okay, and you know, there's two heads of state that actually used to be so proud of the fact that they slept 4 hours or 5 hours. And that was Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. And think about that. They both had Alzheimer's. And so those are the only two heads of state that I know of that used to really boast about getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And they both got Alzheimer's. And the research shows that only 1 to 2% of the people that have dementia or Alzheimer's is due to a genetic reason. The single most significant threat or significant factor that poses a threat to Alzheimer's is less than 7 hours of sleep a night. So they have actually, usually they say, well, we can't say it's causal. We can't say it's causal that lack of sleep will cause this, but they're actually saying the science is so clear that we're ready to say that it is actually causal, that the number one factor that will determine whether or not you will get Alzheimer's or dementia is going to be whether or not you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep and good sleep. So we have to be a little bit obsessive about this, guys. Number two, let's talk a little bit about learning and creativity. People say, oh my God, I have ADHD. Well, did you have ADHD when you were 5 years old? No, I was a pretty good student. Then you don't have ADHD, because that's not ADHD. That's just your brain saying, I don't want to learn anymore because I'm tired. And so if ADHD is a neural development disorder, and it doesn't just show up at when you're older, it has to be there, around the age of 7 and stuff. And so it is a serious disease, but ADHD is majority of the world at this point because of how we are actually engaging with technology. But sleep will actually make your learning and memory and creative problem solving just much higher. So let me tell you a little bit about how the brain works another way when it comes to learning. There's something called the hippocampus. Imagine that the hippocampus is a USB stick, okay? We take this USB stick and every morning we learn some things and we learn, but the memory on that USB stick is not endless. We have a little bit of memory and we sit and we learn from our teacher or we learn from Dr. Saliha on this USB stick. Then when we go to bed at night, that USB stick goes into the cortex and it moves everything from that memory and starts to consolidate and save the learning. It starts to say, okay, this is meaning something, and this is connected to what she said earlier or what that person said. So all the consolidation is happening at that time into your long-term memory. Then it actually is removing things from your USB stick, so the next morning you can wake up and you can learn some new things. That all happens in deep sleep, the same time that the glymphatic system is turning on. And then you're able to wake up and you're able to recall things because that USB stick was actually saved into your long-term memory, and you're able to learn new things because that USB stick has been emptied out. What is happening to kids these days, and what is happening to you probably, is that USB stick is overloaded and you are not actually downloading anything because you're not going into deep sleep as long. And so that's what's happening in deep sleep. And then you have this REM sleep. And the REM sleep is where these weird associations happen. This is like the unconscious madness of us and the magic of us, okay? So basically, poor REM sleep will lead to less divergent / creative thinking. Imagine that you Google picture frames, okay? You're buying picture frames and all these like things come up about picture frames. Page 1 will be extremely relevant to picture frames. But then if you go on page 20, and try doing this sometimes, and then you go on to page 20, and on page 20 of Google, even though you've Googled picture frames, pictures of like sand dunes might show up, or pictures of water and beaches might show up. And you're like, where, like I did picture frame, and then out came pictures of dunes and beaches. Why is that? And so these weird associations happen. And then you find out that, oh, wait, they're both made out of sand, right? Glass is made out of sand, etc. I don't know. I just made that up because there's a picture frame in front of me, but that's how loose my mind is in that sense. So these weird, remarkable, creative insights happen during REM sleep, okay? And so, and they've done all sorts of research where they gave people a difficult problem, and then they said, you know, they tried to make them work on it, and it took them however much time. And then they gave that same problem to people who had gotten a good night's sleep, and they were 3 times faster to solve that problem. And if you pull an all-nighter, you are 40% less likely to learn anything the next day, or even recall anything of what you have just learned. So you don't want to do that. You want to go to bed early, wake up early. That's what you want to do if you have an exam coming up. The next thing is that sleep and mental health. Basically, every major psychiatric disorder or problem, mental health problem, has a sleep component to it. Anxiety, depression, psychosis, bipolar, name it. Anything has a sleep component to it because it really actually will activate you. So you have a 60% likelihood of reacting. So if you see the picture at the bottom, you see that the orange one is the amygdala. It is our fight or flight response. That thing is 60% bigger in people who get less than 7 hours of sleep. So there are times, and you know it, when you go to sleep and then you only got like 3 hours of sleep, and the next day you're like kicking the dog, the door, the kid, everything that comes in your way because you're just more reactive. And so a good night rest is going to obviously make you less reactive. You're less likely to reach out to people, strangely, when you have a more reactive amygdala. And there are parts of your brain, which are the alarm centers of your brain, and I won't go too much into this, but the parietal region, which actually reaches out to people in times of help, actually starts to get, you know, all kinds of havoc sort of thrown into it. And so you're less likely to reach out to people. You're more likely to anticipate things that aren't there. You misread social cues just by one night of sleep, guys. The next morning, your husband says something and you're like, really? That's what you think? That's what you think. And even though he was like, but I didn't really say anything, but you start to look at his face. Well, why are you giving me the cold shoulder? And he's like, I'm just trying to work. I'm not doing anything. So you start to misread social cues. It actually could, and imagine you do this multiple days, it almost could look like a psychosis because you're seeing things and hearing things that aren't actually really there. And you're reading people's behavior that isn't actually isn't right. And so you're engaging in poor judgment. There's poor moral judgment because you're more likely to be pleasure seeking when you are activated. So, you know, that person that you wanted to contact, but you shouldn't really contact, but then you contacted anyways, you're going to do a lot more of that. And that's obviously going to cause a whole lot more issues in your life. And then you end up making poor decisions. So sleep is linked to so many different issues when it comes to mental health, but definitely can actually increase thoughts of suicide. Just thoughts. I'm not saying that you actually will, but you just feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm sick of this now. And, you know, Matthew Walker says that the bridge between hope and despair is a good night. Despair and hope is a good night's sleep. And so if you feel like you're in this sort of desperate situation, sometimes a good night's sleep will actually just bring you on and say, okay, because think about it, sometimes you need your creative solutions, and those creative solutions are not going to happen when you are tired. And that's why the night, there's so many fairy tales that even have, like, you know, go to bed at night, and then in the morning in the evening, the fairy might come, and then in the morning you have a solution. So that's kind of what the night does. The night actually has a healing and creative aspect to it that actually supports good mental health. And then lastly, when it comes to immunity, your immunity is actually super compromised when you are getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So like I said, every day our body produces bacteria, our body produces viruses, our body produces all sorts of, you know, disorders inside of it. But our body is also very sophisticated and it knows how to heal itself. Okay. But one night of 4 to 5 hours of sleep, your killer fighter cells, so these bacterias that are produced in our body, my killer fighter cells go after them and they kill off the disease. And this is what all of our bodies are doing. They're fighting all the time. They're fighting other diseases and other foreign substances that shouldn't actually be in it. One night, it actually is going to decrease your killer fighter cells by 70%. You only have 30% left. Think about that. Like, we're in a time of COVID. We definitely don't want to have our body be more vulnerable at this time, but we just definitely don't want our body to be vulnerable, period. And this is what I was saying, that the two diseases, dementia's, Alzheimer's, and cancer, which are, you know, two of the diseases that are most feared at this time, are actually a result of us just not getting good sleep. And so there was one study, I can talk on and on about this, but there was one study done, and they injected mice with malignant tumor cells. Okay, so these are active cancer, and they allowed half of them to sleep, just go to sleep like people do, and then the other half, they woke them up. So it was a disrupted sleep. So it wasn't like this deep restorative sleep. So they woke them up, and then the lights would turn on, and then they woke them up, and then the lights would turn on, and that. And after 1 week, they saw a 200% increase in the tumor cells or in the cancer growth. And the tumors were a lot more aggressive at that point. So you actually are increasing the stress on the body. The parasympathetic system is not getting activated. You're actually more, there's more risk of inflammation. And that actually is the underpinning of so many different cancers, because the sleep actually, the lack of sleep will agitate your nervous system, and it basically goes on overdrive, and it ramps up to fight or flight, and you don't want to be in that state all the time. There was also studies done that you were 400% more likely to catch a cold if you sleep 3 hours or less. And so that would be definitely not, and then that actually should say 5 hours. It should not say 3 hours. Sorry, guys, it should say 3 times. But it's actually 5 hours or less. So I don't think anyone sleeps 3 hours. I hope not. And then there was one other study done in the Surrey Sleep Center in England, where they took normal, healthy women and they let them sleep. And one group's, they just had them sleep for disrupted sleep for 6 hours, okay? Or actually it was good sleep for 6 hours. And they found that there were 711 genes that were actually disrupted or changed in their expression. So when I say sleep will go down into your nook and cranny of your body, it literally will go down to your DNA level and change your DNA expression. And so you really, really should now at this point understand what sleep is absolutely critical for our well-being. So let's talk a little bit about deconstructing sleep. And I won't talk about this for too long because there isn't anything very exciting about this, but it's important to know that stage 1, this is when you are sort of dozing off, and you can be lightly, you're sort of in this state where you're about 7 to 10 minutes where you could be sort of woken up. And this is what a nap should actually be. The second stage is that you're moving into it. This is about 20 minutes long. And then you move into stage 3 and 4. And stage 3 and 4 is the deep sleep. Okay. And you move through these cycles multiple times a night. And there's usually every 90 minutes you move through a cycle. Every 90 minutes, you move through a cycle. And in the last half of the night, so between the hours of maybe 3 and 6, you move through these cycles a whole lot faster. So let's just say that you go to bed at 2 a.m., because there's a lot of people who do this, which blows my mind still. I'm too old for this, but you are not going to get as many deep sleep cycles, but you will get a lot more of the REM cycles. So the last part of the night is heavy on REM sleep. And then the earlier part of the night is the deep restorative sleep. And so it's absolutely important for you to get a good range of cycles. So you don't want to wake up at 4 in the morning on a regular basis. But if you had to pick, I guess I would just say that try to go to bed around 10 and then wake up at 5. That would be a good where you're getting enough of the deep sleep and then still getting REM sleep, because there's a lot of people who are early risers and they say, well, okay, well, I get 6 hours of sleep and that's okay, 7 hours of sleep, but they could be missing out on the REM sleep. And that is actually really very, very important for mood and memory and creativity. And that happens usually in the last 3 hours of your sleep. So for example, it's gonna happen probably between the hours of 3 and 7 mostly, that you're gonna have the REM sleep, 75% of your REM sleep. So you move faster through those cycles. So there's something called the circadian rhythms, which actually regulate these sleep cycles. And when you go to sleep and when you wake up, that actually is related to your circadian rhythms, and it's your internal body clock. It varies from person to person, but most of us are on the same clock, and it rises with the sun and it sets with the sun. Now, what's happening nowadays is that our body and our mind actually is being disrupted by a lot of this blue light that we are being exposed to. First of all, electricity is probably like the worst thing that we can do for our brain and our sleep, but the blue light, which is on the screen that we all have, on all of our screens, on our phones, on our computers, there's a blue light. This blue light is the same light that the surgeon has over their head. That light communicates to the surgeon's brain and our brain, and as we look all day long, do not release melatonin into this brain. Do not release melatonin into this brain. And melatonin is what regulates our circadian rhythms. And this is what actually, we will see dips in the day. And in the middle of the day, this is when people say, oh, I have lunch coma or food coma. Not true, guys. It actually is linked to your circadian rhythms. And this is when people will go have a cup of coffee or have a cup of tea. And that's when they try to boost themselves artificially out of that circadian rhythm. You don't want to do that. Do something that requires not as much energy or mental power between the hours of 1 and 3 p.m. That's when our energy is actually quite unproductive, and our brain is probably at its lowest around 2 to 3 p.m. And then you will see that it will boost up again. And then at 5 or 6, you have your second wind. All of this has to do with your circadian rhythms. And so 1 to 3 p.m. is when it's the strongest, and 2 to 4 a.m. is when it's at its strongest. So this is what happens during the day. And it's actually, you can regulate that by going out into the sun first thing in the morning. And so I usually tell people when they're jet lagged, and remember when we used to do that? When we used to travel, when you go to another country, get out first thing in the morning, and that immediately your clock will start to regulate itself, because it's regulated by the sun. And melatonin, guys, is not a sleep hormone. Melatonin is a darkness hormone. So if you want to regulate your sleep cycles, you want to get out in the sun first thing in the morning, and you want to make it super dim and dark as the night goes on. Okay, so rise with the sun and set with the sun. So what is good quality sleep? So there is quality and then there's quantity. People are like, no, I just need a good 4 hours. Not really. Your brain might need a good 4 hours, but the rest of your body is not going to have a chance to do what it does. You need a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Okay, so you need that as an adult. Please don't argue with me. I've done my research. This is what it says. Now, you should be able to fall asleep within 30 minutes of putting your head on the bed. And that should be happening. It's okay for you to wake up in the middle of the night where you sort of roll over and maybe you're moving through some of your cycles, and then you should be able to go back to sleep within 20 minutes of waking up. You should wake up restored and not tired. There's people that are hitting that snooze button and hitting that snooze button and hitting that snooze button. Not okay, guys. I have not used an alarm clock. Well, I can't remember the last time I used an alarm clock. My eyes will automatically, literally open up exactly precisely at the same time every single day. And during Ramadan, when I was fasting, as long as I got my 7 hours and 15 minutes of sleep, my eyes would open. So if I went to bed earlier and woke up at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, that's when my eyes, 7 hours and 15 minutes is like a clock for me. And it's like a clock for me. And there are times, and maybe I go to bed a little bit later, and 7 hours and 15 minutes later, my body sort of opens its eyes. So that's kind of how you should be feeling. And then if you are getting that deep restorative sleep, you will wake up rested. There's no way you should not be waking up rested. So if you're not waking up rested, that means you're not getting that deep sleep. Okay, and that means the alarm should be going off in your head, not outside of you. So how do you get a good night's sleep? So let's talk a little bit about the myths here. First of all, people say, well, counting sheep helps me. Not really. It's not going to help you. Actually, the research found that counting sheep will actually hinder your sleep, not help it. What actually helps is if you imagine yourself walking down the streets of your favorite city, and that actually will make you doze off a whole lot faster. So counting sheep does not help. Ocean noise and white noise. So I'm like obsessed with fan noise. I have to have the zzzz. I need it. I don't know, I can't sleep in stillness. I don't know why. It must have to do something with the womb or something. There's no research that actually supports that, but they are saying that, you know what, the white noise of a fan is actually the same noise that our brain waves make or the mother's womb makes. So we don't know why, but if it works for you, continue to do it. However, it is not the solution and it will not solve your problems. I will tell you what will though in a minute. Naps help. Absolutely not. Unless you are a ninja napper, you cannot take naps, okay? So throw the naps out. Now, this is what happens, guys. Naps, anything beyond 10 minutes is considered to have a residual effect and you will feel more tired. Now, I don't know any person on the planet that takes 10-minute naps. Okay. So usually it's like, oh, let me just sleep a little bit more. Let me sleep a little bit more. And then like 2.5 hours later, we wake up. You don't want to do that. Now there's siesta cultures, you know, especially in the Asia and Middle East. And, you know, when the sun is hot, we usually just go in and we take a nap. You don't want to do that. The science knows better now that there's a chemical that builds up inside of our brain called adenosine. Okay. This chemical needs to build up, build up, build up, build up, and then at night I start to get drowsy. Guess what happens when you take a nap in the middle of the day? That chemical drops, and I still need it to build up in order for me to feel drowsy around 10:30 p.m. So if I take a nap in the middle of the day, I will not be drowsy at 10:30 p.m. I will not be drowsy at 12:30 a.m. So you don't want to do that, especially if you're trying to lock in your sleep and really trying to protect your brain and your body. You eliminate the nap and do something that actually requires very little energy at around 1 to 3 p.m. You can recover your sleep on a weekend. No, the sleep is not a bank. You don't get to take debt and pay it back. You are doing damage, sometimes irreversible damage to your body when you are going periods of time without getting enough sleep. So don't do that to yourself. Nothing is worth it. And you have to get sophisticated about how you sleep. I work with a lot of management consultants. I work with the C-suite, CEO, CFO, et cetera, and these guys really, the ones who are very serious about their mental and physical health, find a rhythm to their day, and they'd rather go to bed at 10:30 and wake up at 5, and you know, they do things where they actually have a discipline about it, and they still are able to do everything they're able to do. And then people always ask me, like, how do you do it? And I think I do it because, and people always are like a little bit obsessed about what they do in the day, and it's not what you do in the day. It is what you do in the night, I believe, that is most important. So productivity begins what you do in the evening, not what you do in the morning. And then the snooze button helps you get more sleep. Again, this is a myth, guys. Every single time that alarm goes up, there's a little bit of cortisol and adrenaline that gets shot into your body. Over time, little shots of cortisol and adrenaline first thing in the morning, you are literally wearing and tearing your heart's arteries out. Okay, this is like a recipe for heart disease. You don't want to do that. You don't want to keep hitting the snooze button to wake yourself up and get more sleep. You want to do something differently. Snooze buttons and alarms need to be sort of put to rest, and you need to think about your sleep a little bit differently. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do. And I'm running out of time here. I spent a little bit too much time earlier, but don't worry, it doesn't take that long. And for those of you who have to drop off at the hour, remember you can direct message me on my Instagram account, and I will be very happy. And I also have one of those little highlights on my Instagram account that actually talks about the products that I'm going to be talking about right now, and all of these things that you need to do in order to get a good night's sleep. So the first thing will be to stop eating and drinking 3 to 4 hours before bed. Now, 40% of our body's energy goes into digesting our food. That body's energy now needs to go to the liver, the kidneys, all of our homeostatic regulation, all of our tissue repair. Our body needs energy for that, guys. So in order for you to maximize the benefit of sleep, you need to not be digesting food when you close your eyes. So if you eat a big meal and then like an hour later you go to bed, your body is first got to digest the food before it starts to do the liver cleansing and the kidney cleansing and all these other things that it needs to do. So finish off the food before you go to bed, 3 to 4 hours. So you are not, especially like spicy food and things that are going to really disrupt your sleep cycle. Caffeine, the single most important thing for someone like me who loves her caffeine first thing in the morning is remembering, guys, that caffeine has a very long half-life and an even longer quarter life. Now, the half-life of caffeine, if I take a cup of coffee, which is 2 espressos for people who drink espresso, if I take a double espresso at 12 in the afternoon, which is so tempting because that energy is dipping at that time, at 6 p.m., 50% of that caffeine is still in my system, okay? 6 p.m., 50% of that caffeine is still in my system. At midnight, a quarter of that caffeine is still in my system. If you drink coffee, and there's people, I know it, I hear you already. Oh, no, caffeine doesn't do anything to me. I am out, I can drink an espresso and be sleeping the next minute. You are actually disrupting your REM cycle at that point. This is where your memory and your mood is being regulated, FYI. So people who are like, oh, I'm so moody and I have mental health issues and I just don't, can't remember anything. Guess what? You're probably drinking caffeine too late in the night and your REM cycle is being compromised. So you have got to drink your coffee and your caffeine before 10 a.m. This whole idea of 5 p.m. afternoon tea, make it a decaf. Power up using the sun and turn down the lights at night. Limit your blue light consumption. So I suggest, I have some products that I would recommend. So for the blue light, I wear these blue light blocking glasses. And if I'm working on my computer, there's blue light blocking glasses. And then there's something called OcuShield, which is a blue light screen protector. You can get it for your phone. You can get it from your computers. And these are recommended by ophthalmologists and optometrists. So go outside in the sun and soak up the morning sun. Don't worry if you sweat, it's good for you guys. And then in the night, start to dim down the lights. Nothing bright should be in your face. And if it's bright and in your face, then it should have a blue light protector. And if you're watching TV, you can get these blue light glasses. I have like all versions of it. I have this one and I have that one. So it's, I have like, 19 different pairs of blue light glasses. And then I have the orange ones too. Your temperature in your room should be about 16 to 19 degrees. Oh my God, that is so cold. I know people are thinking that, but guess what? There's something that happens in your body where you need to actually cool the core of the body in order for you to get the deep restorative sleep. If your body temperature does not drop that 1 degree that is essential, then you will not get the deep restorative sleep. You must have a sleep routine. So this is what you've done now outside of you. And then you have to have a sleep routine. For people who are really looking to like, oh my God, I can't sleep and I have really bad sleep, I would really recommend taking a shower, a hot shower before you get into bed. Put your pajamas on because there's something called the enclothed cognition theory. The enclothed cognition theory basically talks about how our clothes send a signal to our brain. And if you're sleeping in like your gym, yoga pants and a t-shirt, then your body is probably thinking, oh wait, I need to go to the gym in yoga pants. You will not go into that deep sleep. So the body and the mind are very, very, you got to play it, you got to pay attention to it. You got to respect. And so you need to wear a set of pajamas. So go out and buy your pajamas. You should have some tea. Now for me, I have obviously, as you guys can probably tell, I have a very hyperactive nature and I actually am sort of, moving around most of the day and my mind is moving around 15 times as fast as my body. And so in order for me to bring some of that down, I usually have a, double dose of tea, and I'll tell you which ones in a second. And then read a book. Like a real book, the books with paper. And if you don't want to read a book, then I would say, please make sure you put a blue light screen protector on your Kindle and your phone, or not on your Kindle, on your iPad that has the Kindle on it. The Kindle actually does not have a blue light. That's why it looks like it's from like 1932. It's because it doesn't have a blue light. You might want to do some progressive muscle relaxation. Just Google progressive muscle relaxation. One of my favorite apps, and you guys probably already know this, is called Brain FM. I listen to it when I want to be productive. I want to listen to it when I meditate. I listen to it when I want to go to sleep. And they use binaural beats. And I talk about this on my Instagram as well, on the sleep suggestions. It's called Brain FM. Use aromatherapy to relax your body and your mind. It's, there's no hard science, but come on guys, the nature doesn't lie, and nature is actually quite more sophisticated than we ever are. Lavender and jasmine relax the body. When we go into a spa, no one tells us, excuse me, Dr. Saliha, we would like you to relax now. No one tells us that. They just create an environment where we are relaxed. Do that for yourself, where you create an environment where your body relaxes so you move into a state of relaxation. Limit your alcohol because it will disrupt your REM cycle. Now, a lot of times people are like, oh, I want a nightcap. That nightcap is knocking out your cortex. It is not actually going to let you have the deep restorative sleep that you need. Please, guys, do not drink alcohol before you go to bed. 3 to 4 hours outside of your sleep before you go to bed, because it will mess with your sleep and you will not get the deep restorative sleep that you need. I would recommend taking supplements like Magvita, Healthy Cell, the AM/PM1. Melatonin, there's a lot of research that has, melatonin is like the wild, wild west, and it can actually vary between 80 to 460% versus what is said on the bottle. So it might say 5, but it will be 5 times as much as 5, or it will be 2 times as less. And that's kind of what the melatonin is. It's not a regulated medication, but if it's helping you, it does not hurt. But if you take too much melatonin, then you're gonna feel groggy and because you're messing with your circadian cycle. So you don't wanna do that to yourself. But the MagVita, the magnesium plus B6, actually has 6 magnesium salts. We are mostly deficient in magnesium. It relaxes the body. And when it relaxes the body, then you actually are able to get into a deeper state of sleep. So magnesium is a great supplement but it's very hard to absorb. So if you are not taking it with B6, most likely you are not absorbing enough of it in your body. That's why it's subdermal. So people have magnesium sprays, but they smell funny. So I have found MagVita, which is really good. Healthy Cell, it's a little bit pricey. You can buy these things on Amazon. And I would really recommend. The AM one has all sorts of, AM vitamins, and the PM one has all sorts of herbs that actually do relax you. You can, if you want to eat some snacks in the evening, you can try kiwi, walnuts, almonds. These actually release tryptophan and melatonin, so they do help with relaxation. So you want to do that. You don't want to eat those in the middle of the day, by the way. So you want to keep it towards later on in the evening. The teas that I recommend, I really love Pukka tea. Pukka tea is organic, and it's actually quite inexpensive, and you can buy it on Amazon. And I drink their nighttime tea. If I run out of nighttime tea, then I have their Relax or their 3 chamomile. And this is the tea that really just sort of chills me out. And they usually use medicinal grade type of herbs and quantities in their tea. So, and I've tried literally everything under the sun. And I just find that this stuff really, like I travel with this stuff. I have like a kit that I travel with when it comes to sleep. If you cannot sleep, for like you wake up and you're tossing around, 20 minutes is what you get. If you cannot sleep beyond that, get up and get out of bed, go do something, read a book, do not look at your phone, and then get back into bed, because you do not want to associate your brain with this place called the bed, and the bed is actually where you stay awake, worry all night. You don't want to do that, okay? And then you also want to get a sleep divorce if necessary, and this is for very happy couples who actually the husband is snoring or the wife is snoring, and you might actually want to sleep in separate rooms. People tend to have much healthier, happier relationships because everyone gets a good night's sleep. However, if you are snoring, then I would recommend that you get a sleep study done, because you are not getting the deep restorative sleep, because there's an oxygen block and your body is probably not getting what it needs. So I would really actually ask you to get that checked out. And then there are times where you're thinking really negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts you want to write down on a piece of paper. There's research that shows that if you write it down on a piece of paper, you can crumple it up and trash it, and that actually will make you feel like you got rid of that negative thought. So trashing the negative thoughts before you go to bed actually will help you feel like you got rid of it. These are some of the ways, but like I said, this will be very, very important, having a sleep routine. For those parents who are out watching me right now, when we are trying to sleep train our babies, we become like obsessed when we are toilet training them or sleep training them. That's kind of how you need to be when you need to be an adult. You need to become a little bit obsessed with getting your sleep cycle regulated. And that might mean that you're not watching Netflix till late night. That might mean that you're not going out as much because your friends eat at 9 p.m. and you need to be in bed by 10:30. That might mean that until you get a good rhythm in place, your life literally has to revolve around your sleep cycle. And then when you get that good rhythm in place, then yeah, okay, there are times when I stay awake till midnight, and it does happen every now and then, but not very often. And I really have shifted a lot of my social life to daytime. And I'd rather do it in the day than in the evening, because I just know that I'm going to be compromising too much. I'm compromised the next day. I compromise my sleep. I compromise a lot more when I'm doing it in the evening. So I would really, really recommend taking it with that level of seriousness where you literally see what I wrote down as a prescription and you follow that to the T. If you follow it to the T, there is no way that you will not sleep unless you have some sort of neurological issue. Then I would recommend that you see a neurologist and get that seriously sort of checked out. These are the two Instagram handles I contribute to, but I also contribute to something called @SmartHeart for parents, because I know I get a lot of questions about sleep and parents and teens. So you can ask me a question on SmartHeart, @SmartHeart board game.